Hello, welcome into the LSR Podcast. Dustin Gouker, along with me, Adam Candee. Matt Brown is off working on his Twitter. He feels like he's been letting you down all this time, telling you that if you hate yourself, that you should follow him on Twitter. He's finally going on that self-improvement track, Dustin. He's going to do something about it. That's why we don't have him here for episode number 111 of the Legal Sports Report podcast.
I'm excited to see how you improve at Twitter. I think improving at Twitter means you use it less, probably, but we'll see.
Yes, I mean, my personal choice for how to improve my Twitter would be to get rid of it entirely. But, you know, that's not really the reality of the day, especially when we're trying to keep up with as much news as has been going on. There was a theory out there that the summer might be the slow season, and let me just tell you, that has not been the case for us at Legal Sports Report and throughout the rest of the gaming world. That is for certain. We're going to talk about one state that we thought might get sports betting done this year that clearly is not going to happen. Another state that's been in a holding pattern for quite a while that at least seems to be moving in the right direction. One partner changing significantly in Connecticut. But Dustin, we'll start off where we've been located for the past few weeks in New York, because it still remains the talk of the industry as to what's going to happen with the RFA in New York. Our Matthew Waters took some information from the Nickel G's conference in Chicago. I thought that was very interesting, talking about how high the revenue share might go in New York and what that might mean, not only for New York, but for other states. And so, you know, we kind of know that the floor is going to be about 50%, but, Matthew has some people suggesting it could go much higher than that.
Yeah, I know a bunch of you guys were out at the National Council of Legislators from Gaming States, which is always an interesting time, especially in the world of expansion of sports betting and states learning from each other and what's going on and moving into other verticals in sports betting. But, we have people there talking as that we could see as much as 60% of revenue share going to the state from whoever wins these bids from New York. And as I'm sure you touched on, we now know what the process is starting to look like for this. So we're looking at this and it's like, okay, yeah, floor of 50%. If you want to win the bid, how much higher do you need to go? Because this is obviously being competitively bid. We have everybody would like to be in New York, but you also want to make it profitable. So how high can you go on the revenue share to make this worth it? And, it sounds like some people probably think 55, 60%. There is still room to make money, or you value the market that much. You can't afford to not be in New York, so you have to overpay to get that market access. So it'll be interesting to see what happens out of all of this. I can't imagine there's anybody who's not in on this bidding in some way if they think they have a shot at it, and probably a bunch of people working together on bids, and that economy of scale might make a 60% revenue share with the state make more sense, and we'll see.
That's the really interesting part about this, Dustin, is you might see some bedfellows that you would not expect at all to try to make the economics of this work. I was actually just doing an interview in New York today where they were saying to me, well, does this mean that only the major players can get involved? And I said, well, the answer to that is who can afford to give up 50 to 60% of their revenue? It's not a startup who's in one other state, nor is that company going to score well in the RFA, because there's heavy weight in the RFA for experience and platform integrity and basically knowledge of running sports betting that seems to favor the larger of the companies. I find it fascinating when we hear about these potential super bids of DraftKings plus, FanDuel plus, BetMGM plus. It might be sort of a one-off for New York that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Yeah, and you said it. Those are 1, 2, and 3 in that order in every state, basically. If they are working together, but if you're New York, you also look at a bid that's coming together from all of those. Can you afford to not? If that's the bid that they're offering, can you afford to not have the 3 biggest sports books in New York if you're trying to make the ridiculous amount of money that they're saying, which as we've said ad nauseum, they're not going to get there even with the proper bid. So it is fascinating that we're seeing like these super bids and are other small operators going to pull together to try to create one major operator? Who knows? It is going to be a wild time to see what this looks like. And this is why we're talking about New York, because it's a mystery box right now. We have really no clue what this is going to look like, and the success or failure of a New York sports betting market is going to depend on what these bids look like and who is involved and what New York decides to do moving forward with their legal sports betting industry.
And the other thing to keep in mind that we haven't mentioned recently, we mentioned plenty around the time of the passage of the budget, is that the tribal issue is not entirely resolved. It's tribal participation is included in the RFA. You get extra weight for a revenue sharing agreement with a tribal nation. That being said, we haven't necessarily resolved the concerns of tribes who might not be able to offer legal sports betting through their casinos because of the exclusivity zones that exist largely throughout upstate New York. So nothing really new to report in that area, but that's also still looming out there as something that could slow down launch.
Yeah, and it's dissonant from everything else that's going on kind of around the country where they're figuring this out. Arizona, the biggest example of that, where the tribes have got something in exchange for allowing a more open sports betting market. And it's kind of strange that New York's just kind of said, well, they can be involved, but there's no God-given right to do that. They're just here. They can be involved, but we'll see how it works out. And I wouldn't be happy if I were them. There's been we can get into the squabbling of New York and the tribes over gaming issues. It's been around for a while, but just dismissing it is we haven't talked about a lawsuit, but that's at least a possibility out there in the background that the tribes in New York say, hey, wait a second, this isn't fair to us, and what would that look like? So.
And I mostly bring it up to just remind people that we all are prisoners of the moment when it comes to keeping up with the legal sports betting industry in the United States and the rapid expansion we've seen over 3.5 years. But keep in mind that this might be an issue from a few months ago, but it is still an issue that is lingering out there when we discuss what's going on in New York. Dustin, next door in Connecticut, another issue where it seems that tribal and commercial participation has been fairly well worked out, and we see that Mohegan has moved on from Candee. They've kept some of the revenue sharing that was in the original agreement, but they've chosen a new partner, and it's not a big surprise.
Yeah, they went with FanDuel as their sports betting partner. I think, we can talk about the why, but I think it's very obvious. You're partnering with the number one operator across the United States. They have to compete with DraftKings right off the bat, which is the partner of the other casino in Connecticut. So you have to really compete. Like, Mohegan Sun is a good brand. It is a brand that's known in Connecticut, but them just trying to spin up their own sportsbook on a Candee platform is not going to be as successful in the short term, at least in competing with DraftKings. So this is really a no-brainer. It was going to be them or one of the other big ones. MGM has not gotten along with the Connecticut casinos based on their trying to get a casino in Connecticut downstate and their presence in Massachusetts. So maybe not a shock that MGM was probably not going to be in that. So. Yeah, and I think it's a shrewd move. Like, you want to compete right away. This is what you have to do. FanDuel probably paid a lot for that to probably giving them a pretty good deal for that access too. We know Connecticut, one of the more affluent states. A lot of people who live in New York work in New York and live in Connecticut. High median income, so it's a small state but a really important one. And when you're talking about cross sell with everything else, Massachusetts, which we're going to talk about, New York, it really makes sense to have be out there quickly with the best product, and Mohegan saw that as FanDuel partnering with them.
Meanwhile, there is a third skin in Connecticut that will go through the lottery, and we've been playing this interesting sort of spin-off of The Bachelor with this thing where first we handed out 4 or 5 roses to everybody who applied and said, you can come give us a presentation. And then the selection has been made. The lottery was able to spend some time, I guess, in the fantasy suite with its favorite operators. And here we are with a selection having been made. But here's the thing. Much like The Bachelor wrapping up production and then we have to wait months to find out what actually happened on the show, we still don't know who the partner is. The lottery decided that they were going to finish negotiation with that partner, And Dustin, basically what we've been going through is sort of like a process of elimination in rumors for the last month or so, where obviously we know it's not DraftKings or FanDuel because of their partnerships. And then it's sort of been, well, could it be MGM? Could it be Caesars? And we've sort of been, at least rumor-wise, eliminating them one by one.
Yeah, and again, just like the New York process, if you're the lottery, you want somebody to come in day one, and like Mohegan said, you need to have somebody come in day one and compete. Like, that's not going to be a small operator. I can't imagine it's like what you said, one of these small operators only in one state. Maybe they give a lot of revenue, but what's a small sliver of nothing, right? So it's got to be one of the big operators. So could it be a Barstool? I don't see a lottery partnering with Barstool Penn National. We've heard Caesars has been involved. MGM would certainly make sense. The only weirdness in Connecticut is you can't. You're supposed to not use the brand of a land-based casino in Connecticut, if I understand it correctly. But we've seen in lots of jurisdictions, people get around these little weird regulations. So would BetMGM be the land-based casino? I don't know. It's an online property, right? So who knows? But it has to be one of these large operators. I think we keep thinking that we're going to hear this soon, but it's obviously drug on for a while. It can't possibly. I think we're at a lot of the hay is in the barn now. We're getting close. I think Connecticut, out of all the states we've talked about and have talked about on this podcast, I think that's the closest to launch, because we have a very easy system where we know 3 sportsbooks. The tribes are going to run things. The lottery gets to get its own thing spun up. And if you're just using another partner, is it that hard to get spun up? So I think we're pretty close in Connecticut, but we obviously still need to know who this lottery provider is going to be.
Yeah, and you make a great point that because of who the competition is, it has to be an operator that has a turnkey setup. It has to be someone who can come in and have no potential technical flaws that would slow down the state's ability to generate money through the lottery, or else why would they have gone that way in the first place? You mentioned the land-based issue. Yeah, it's certainly worth consideration. I mean, could they call the BetMGM app like Bet Jamie Foxx? Could they put 2 T's on Bet and change the brand a little bit? I don't know, but it's certainly going to be someone on the larger side. We've basically been spending most of this podcast talking about the Northeast, and we're just creeping our way up the Atlantic coast to Massachusetts, where we started out this session, and mind you, the Massachusetts session is basically endless, so we're not looking at a hard deadline anytime soon here. But there were close to 24 sports betting bills, and it seems that we have finally narrowed it down to a couple of vehicles in the House and the Senate. There are potentially some differences to work out, though.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I get I know you do. I get updates on these bills in Massachusetts, and it's hard to keep up with. There's it seems like every 5 minutes I'm getting an update. Oh, this bill got changed, or moving through this. But yeah, we're seeing movement in the House. We're supposed to see some movement in the Senate in the not too distant future. There are not exactly nobody seems to have agreed. We thought when this process was going to kind of restart here in the summer that we'd see kind of a homogenous approach, but not everybody is quite on the same page. We have differing bills. There's going to have to be some working out of this, whether it happens through amendments or through a conference committee or what have you. But yeah, I think Massachusetts, there's a lot going for Massachusetts. They have to be seeing the rest of the states around, and everybody. Basically, all their neighbors are moving towards sports betting, right? You're gonna have. We've talked about Connecticut, New York, Rhode Island already has it. You're just behind if you're, Massachusetts fancies itself a gaming state and that it wants to be on the forefront of this stuff. And if it doesn't get it done this year, then you're again starting from way behind. I've always, we always, DraftKings based in Boston. You think they could help push this across the finish line? You have Wynn there as well with his casino. They consistently want sports betting as well. You think this would all the stars seem to be aligning, and they have plenty of time to get this done this year. But don't have homogenous bills, and we'll see. I don't know how we're handicapping it or how you're handicapping it, but it seems like we're moving toward a world where Massachusetts could have sports betting next year.
And I think next year is the key, Dustin. Right, in terms of handicapping it, next year could mean by the Super Bowl. Next year could mean by next football season. And I think we're probably more likely toward next football season than we are toward this year's Super Bowl, just because this is a state that moves slowly. It has always moved slowly. And I don't think the fact that we have bills moving right now in late July is going to allow for setting up a process that gets up and running by the Super Bowl. Maybe if things went quickly, if you expedited for March Madness, maybe, but that would be an aggressive timeline as well. It's a state that moves slowly, but as we talked about, the neighbors are moving, and it's kind of the same situation that Ohio is going to find itself in here soon, where it's surrounded by legal sports betting states, and it's losing revenue to those states. And much like you mentioned with Connecticut, there's a lot of money in Massachusetts as well, and so they don't want to see that going over the borders. So we're tracking what's happening there in Massachusetts. As Dustin mentioned, there has been movement this week, and some of the key differences, I'd say the biggest difference right now is the tax rate on mobile. You're looking at one bill at 15%, one bill at 25%. It sounds big. I don't think that's insurmountable in any way. It's not like one side is saying we only want 8% and the other one is, Cuomo banging the table for 60%. Like there's common ground to be found when it comes to that. There's some differences in terms of in-state college betting and so on, but none of those differences appear to be insurmountable if we are serious about getting something done in Massachusetts. Staying up in the greater Northeast area, Dustin, say this much for Maine. They find creative ways to screw up legal sports betting in their state. If it wasn't Governor Mills using the weird veto process to delay it months last time and then ultimately issue a weird statement about how she didn't want to start on the slippery slope toward betting on spelling bees, now it is a dispute over whether licenses should be tethered to casinos that appears to have submarined Maine for this year.
Yeah, I know you and I both know a lot about legislative processes that we probably wish we didn't know, but the fact that this one seemed like it was going to the governor, and then it got, because of the vagaries of how Maine's legislature worked, it didn't actually get there. It got stuck. There's the bill sponsor doesn't want it to be tethered to casinos. This is actually kind of wild because this is basically how it gets done everywhere else, other than a few key places like a Tennessee and a Wyoming where it's not tethered to any kind of casino. So, one of the senators there said doesn't want it to be tethered, wants it to be a more open market, and that's a good thing actually, to have a competitive market for sports betting, as we talk about all the time on this podcast. So, Maine was looking bad, then quickly looked good, and now back to it's dead now. As far as we know, I don't think there's any ways to revive this from the dead. So we're looking at next year, and with all the problems, we had the last year we missed it too. So who knows what happens next year? Maybe Maine gets done next year, maybe it doesn't. But we'll be following well behind the rest of the New England states now.
Dustin, it's a good thing we know a person or two up there, because the whole question of is it on its way to the governor, and then we find it, and I'm using the exact terminology here, laying on the appropriations table, because these certain bills have to go through another round of consideration. We do a pretty thorough job of following legislative processes throughout the country, and this one left us scratching our heads a little bit trying to figure out exactly how it was going to go in Maine. The interesting thing about Senator Lucchini that you mentioned, and this was his bill, and then his bill was amended to include the tethering over his objections, and then he basically worked against his own bill, from what we hear, after it passed in a form that he didn't like. And this really set up as a battle between Penn National and some others, and Penn National had some allies on that side of trying to get things tethered to casinos, and in the end, nobody's going to win here, because it's another year that the state falls behind. Again, we just talked about the fact New Hampshire has had its DraftKings monopoly for a few years. Massachusetts appears to be moving in the right direction. Connecticut certainly is on its way to launch. So Maine behind for yet another year. So who knows? I don't know what sort of creative ways they can come up to not have it happen again next year. We are also in the middle of prime season, Dustin, for revenue reports. We feel like they're dropping, one an hour, the way they're coming out right now. Anything interesting in terms of the major states that you saw? We saw New Jersey, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and some others over the last week.
I'm only disappointed that Wyoming hadn't yet launched by the time I was in Wyoming. My vacation was entirely through states without sports betting, through Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho. So sad pandas for me that I could not gamble and help Wyoming to get off to a good start with its sports betting. But and two, to preface this, we're also getting into the dog days of sports betting. This is, July is going to literally, July and then into August, is going to be, these are the worst months. We reiterate that, but like there is nothing going on. There's baseball. Maybe there's a little bit more interest in the Olympics now. I've been surprised at how, like, this time around, how many markets there are for the Olympics. Like, I know BetMGM has put out like markets for just about everything in the Olympics now. You could bet on gold medals for just about any event that you wanted to. But that's to preface this. Like, we're not seeing a ton of. We're not going to see a ton of action. The thing that's interesting to me is we're not seeing a huge fall off to a lot of these states. We're seeing pretty incremental drops in handle. We even saw some like in New Jersey, saw revenue climbs, thanks to a huge hold, lots of parlays, $71 million off on $767 million in handle in New Jersey. That's an interesting thing. So like, people are, finding ways to bet interestingly, I guess, and maybe that means suboptimally because they're losing more in these summer months, just looking for something to bet. But again, we're talking about June, which is basically just hockey playoffs, baseball, and NBA playoffs, and we're hitting numbers that Nevada doesn't hit in NFL season, right? So that's the interesting takeaway from that. Pennsylvania, same thing, small dip. $420 million on handle month on month, which is, again, small, like that doesn't sound great, but like just in these months, not huge. And still saw revenue still doing well, actually increasing to $42 million in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I mean and we saw again a little bit Michigan sports betting, which is the new market. This is not seeing a huge increase either, even though it's a maturing market. So it is just interesting to see how things work. We're going to see June was a little bit more action than July and August. So how sturdy are these markets through these, and how much is just people like, we're just going to be ramping up for what could be will absolutely be some absolutely huge numbers in terms of handle and revenue once the NFL season starts in September.
To piggyback on a point you were making there about the hold and parlays, we saw multiple states with revenue jumps, and a lot of it based on parlays. And I just want to throw in some anecdotal experience that I've had this summer now that we're back to traveling at least a little bit. I've talked many times about the fact that Nevada's apps are different than everyone else's, so I don't see a lot of what's out there on a day-to-day basis beyond what other people who live in these states are telling us. And I traveled to Colorado, I traveled to Indiana, I traveled to Illinois, and went and signed up for apps and turned on the notifications just to see what I would get. And again, not to sound like I've been living under a rock, we hear these stories from people. I was still blown away by the amount of push into parlays that I was getting from the notifications, from the offers in the app. It really is remarkable just how much effort is being put into getting people into these bets. And again, some of them include free money for betting on a parlay, and so you are getting some value down the line if you bet a certain amount. But at the same time, we know parlays hold money for sportsbooks, period. Like, no one's going to win betting parlays over time unless you are the sharpest of sharp bettors. And so, there's going to be some discussion to be had about the amount of push into parlays that is going on as we develop this market a little bit more. And I just was really interested to see it with my own eyes, in a few different legal sports betting states I've been to over the last couple of months.
Yeah, there's a line that could be being crossed, I think, if you're trying to push people too much into it. Yeah, I mean, we know, and the sportsbooks know, this is where they make money. People don't. But people are also, the casual sports bettor, we get a lot of the people talking about how much people want to win and be sharp bettors. People want big scores. Like, you can do the side, you can do your minus 110 bets. You can win here and there. You can grind out a lot. People like the thrill. This is why DFS succeeded, because you have the thrill of this possibility of maybe I'll win $1 million. You put a $5 parlay, and you see the marketing from all the Twitter accounts on sportsbooks. That's what gets people excited. Now there's a line to be crossed in responsible gambling and over advertising this stuff, but this is also kind of what people want. They want they're thrill seeking. Get why people play the lottery too. You know, most people know you're not going to win the lottery, right? You're not going to win, but maybe fewer people in this nascent market really know they're not going to win these parlays more often than not. So, but this is just what casual bettors want to some extent. They want the thrill of trying to get a big score off of a small amount of money, and you know that's also going to make the sportsbooks money. So I don't know where I'm going with all this, but it is an interesting problem, you know, that you're going to see, and it is that a larger part of the responsible gambling and all of this. You know, see people, if we're constantly pushing people to parlays, is that a bad thing for the ecosystem? Is it a bad thing overall? Probably, but it also addresses kind of what people want here in America. I think is that chasing of the big score.
Yeah, and there is obviously fragmentation in the market to be addressed here, right? There are casual folks who do want to treat it like the lottery, who want to come and throw in $5 or $10 on a 10-leg parlay and hope it comes through because they've seen it advertised, you know, on social media or elsewhere. And look, could it hit? Sure, it could hit, you know, but you need to understand what your odds are, you know, of being able to score on one of those. It's not very likely, and as long as you understand that going in, you're treating it more like an entertainment product, then absolutely. It's
right.
More that, you know, I think the question eventually could be more around how hard the push is, right? How and which customers are being pushed into them, right? You know, are there customers who have shown a proclivity for betting more, et cetera, et cetera? You know, just general discussion thoughts that I know we'll be talking about over the next few years in this market, because as much as we have filled up 111 episodes of this podcast, you and I both know we've just started to scratch the surface of the discussions that we're going to be having about legal U.S. sports betting over the coming years.
No doubt.
So.
And yeah, it's I mean, again, I think you're right on the education part. Like, people know going to DFS contests, know they're probably not going to win. People going to lottery, know they're probably going to win. Do they know that they're losing more often than not on these parlays? Maybe not. I think that's the difference, and that's where you get into this gray area. Like, how much should you pushing them? How much is responsible? Again, you got lots of people. You got states partnering with them. You got sports teams partnering with them. Is like, what is the social cost? There are conversations to be had that I don't think that nobody's really had, or people have had, but it hasn't been brought to the forefront. And I think at some point, and your experience being that, again, like Matt, and I know Matt in his other venues will tell you not to bet parlays until the cows come home. But again, people want it, and they also want, but are they fully educated on what they should be doing and understand that this is shot taking and not something that's a really a viable strategy for you long term?
Yeah, and we will continue to follow those issues and to report on what we see at LegalSportsReport.com. You can follow me at Adam Candee. That's 2 E's and no Y's, Matt likes to say. You can find Dustin at Dustin Gouker, no, not Gouker, Gouker, on the Twitter machine. You can find our writers at Brad Allen NFL, at Matthew Waters, and at Pat Evans. Finishing up with some quick updates around the country. South Dakota and Maryland, 2 states that legalized at the ballot in 2020, have both moved their rules and regulations along. They're both on track for launch this year. Maryland could be a really interesting market, up to 60 available licenses. Some information that was added into that language in the bill to include minority participation at a higher level than in other states. South Dakota, of course, will be in person just at Deadwood. We saw a couple of market access partnerships announced for Arizona. We are nearly up to half of the licenses potentially accounted for in Arizona, just in terms of market access agreements. That doesn't mean that those are necessarily licenses that have been approved. Of course, we've just barely begun the process there in Arizona as we move the rulemaking along. And we did have some extra regulation information put out this week about what happens if there are more applications than the 20 available licenses that are out there. We have information about that at Legal Sports Report, and of course follow on Twitter as well at LSP Report. Subscribe, rate, review. 5 stars is great. 4 stars we can live with. 3 stars, maybe just send one of us a message first and see what we can do better for you, because we're willing to work on it. We're not perfect here. If the 3 stars is because Matt's not here, don't worry. Matt will be back soon, and we will have many more episodes of the LSR podcast with our friend at Matt Brown M2. Follow him if you love yourself. For Dustin, I'm Adam. Talk to you next week.